No, that's wrong. Dixie Diamonds 456. Matt's 11:09 p.m., Dixie 8:09 a.m. As Edmund Barton entered David Seymour's office, Richard Kelbaugh stood while the police chief remained seated. Looking at Kelbaugh, Barton nodded and said, "Good morning. Safe to assume we're both here to discuss your mysterious informant's overwhelming evidence, which has apparently been gathered illegally." "Good morning," Kelbaugh replied, extending his hand while nodding and smiling, adding "almost" as the men shook hands. "The information I have was not gathered illegally, but I'm afraid my source is unable to come forward for a trial or deposition. We do, however, have this," he said, tapping the thick file that lay on Seymour's desk, "which is full of accurate, detailed information about all three Brentsies beginning way back in 1973 that involve maxima and minima. It begins, however, with your man Sven Lezak at Chow Hall last night, where, as we both know, he wasn't wearing a wire because he agreed to wear a wire and record his conversations with Brent Brentsie only while in the exercise yard. The transcript is right there, but if I may," he concluded with a smile and furrowed forehead, Chief Seymour said, "Why don't both of you take your seats, and we'll hear what Richard has uncovered, and then we can discuss strategy concerning how to use his information." "Thank you, sir," Kelbaugh said with a nod as he swept his hands towards the seat to his left before moving the Brentsie file in front of Barton. "I'll start with last night's conversation, one that is also not on the record, but which I'm confident you'll find interesting. Last night at about 6:30, Sven Lezak was exiting the chow line when he saw Brentsie. As the two passed, Lezak said, "My table's in that corner. I'll save you a seat," while nodding at a table that would provide whoever sat with his back against the wall a clear view of the chow hall, while likewise providing those facing outward with protection from a sneak attack. Brentsie responded with a nod and a thumbs up while continuing in the chow line. Reaching his preferred table, Lezak puts his tray down, sits, and then leans against inmate John J. Geoghan and says, "Find another. I need this spot." Geoghan was ready to fight for his spot until he realized it was Lezak who was infringing. Understanding his place in the prison pecking order, Geoghan's eye twitches and his face darkens before he responds by muttering, "Right," and pushing his tray to the opposite side of the table, placing him in a position where he'll have his back towards roughly 200 fellow inmates. Lezak responds with a nod, a smile, and the simple declaration, "Thanks, John. I got a sissy fishy I need to groom. I'll let you have what's left of him when I'm done." Appreciating both the situation and Lezak's presentation of an olive branch via his explanation, Geoghan returns the smile and asks, "He'll leave something behind to play with, right?" Lezak chuckles and says, "Oh yeah, we can all have a go with him," as he too smiles broadly. Arriving at their seats at the same time, Geoghan stares long and hard at Brentsie before taking the seat opposite him. Once both men are seated, Lezak introduced the two by declaring, "Brent Brentsie, this is Geoghan, J.J. Geoghan. He's all right, but don't cross him and don't piss him off. John, this here's Brent Brentsie. He and his were in the news a while back when they tried to skip town to Indonesia. Big hullabaloo that was. His daddy's here too. Look out for him when you can, would you? Being a Yank and all, he's kind of a fish out of water." Geoghan nods enthusiastically and says, "Oh, sure. Your folks are loaded, aren't they? That might help in here, but don't count on it. I'd stick close to Sven when you can, at least until the mates get some idea of who you are." Brentsie nods his head in recognition of Geoghan's acquiescence to his presence and says, "Geoghan, huh? Nice to meet you. What do people call you?" Geoghan laughs and says, "Depends on who you ask. Me mum named me John Joseph from the Bible, but that didn't seem to take real well, if you know what I mean. You're the bloke who tried to hijack a destroyer, ain't you?" Understanding that where he fell in the prison hierarchy would matter enormously in how he was treated by his fellow inmates, Brentsie responded with a nonchalant, "Yeah, that's how my knee got busted. Some SOB sucker kicked me. I'm going to sue when this is over." Geoghan laughed in response, then said amicably, "Well, good luck with that. What were you trying to get away from anyway?" Resuming his tough guy facade, Brentsie said, "This absolute nutjob French dude who worked at UAQ. My lawyer told me not to talk about it, but I can tell you, I've never heard of anybody being ramrodded like I've been. They blew up my house, they seized my assets, you name it. Ridiculous." Having some understanding of the charges Brent was facing, Lezak laughed and asked, "And all you did was try to kill him, right, Brent, me boy?" Brency chuckles and shakes his head in response before adding, that and still this incredible invention he is. I got lawyers, though. I got good lawyers. They'll have me out of here before you can say aboriginal abominations 5 times fast. Laughing in return, Geoghan said, oh, yeah, before attempting to say aboriginal abominations 3 times fast, which he completes successfully twice before failing at his 3rd attempt, which comes out aboriginal abominations, which brings laughter to the 3 of them. That was the dinner conversation, Kelbos said, which is how the document begins. There's an enormous amount of information in this packet that can be used against all 3 Brencies, whether as evidence or leverage. We all know your man Lizak wasn't wearing a wire at Chow, but if you ask him about this conversation, he can confirm that what I have written here is what happened. You should feel free to use this transcript to keep old Sven in his proper place if he tries to use his position of relative trust with Brency as leverage against justice. Let him know he's just one of many informants we have available vis-a-vis the Brency 3, and that he's vying for receiving greater rewards for greater intel with his fellow inmates.